took lessons in high school from the late Dr. Lynn Dean, who I'm sure has influenced many of the people who are here, whether you've taken lessons with him or otherwise.
He's a wonderful teacher.
Yeah. Yep, he was a big part of the culture here. So, and after my mission, I served in Toronto. I went and got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Utah State. Studied with Gary Amano, if you're familiar with him. Also the late Gary Amano now, which is also sad. And so, I was planning on going on and getting a doctorate degree, and was gearing up for the auditions and everything, getting everything ready, and God had different plans, and found myself back here 2017, and then my wife and I opened up a music school called Resonance, School of Musicianship, and owned and ran that for 5 years, and last year we sold the school to a company called The Piano Place, and they rehired me as the director of St. George, and that's where I'm at. So.
That's great. And you're president of the
and I'm
chapter.
Also, that's true.
St. George chapter. I mean, maybe I should say that about you. Well, my name is Jerald Simon, and I just moved down to St. George about a year ago. I was living in Fruit Heights up in Davis County, and I grew up in Pleasant View, and as I told you, my father had been a professional musician, and I went to Weber State University after I served a mission in Brazil, and I met my wife up there. Her name is Suzanne. She goes by Zanny. So anyone who knows her calls her Zanny. We have 3 wonderful children, and their names are Summer, she's 17, and then Preston and Matthew. So our little guy's going down to 10 and 8. But I love music. I love all things music. And my company's called Music Motivation. My website is musicmotivation.com. I have a cool song series I've created. I have essential piano exercises. I love all different styles of music, and I grew up being forced to play 3 instruments. I loved it, and now I play a few instruments, so it's fun to do.
So what were your 3 instruments? Piano?
So I started with piano. Well, piano and organ, it was the same thing, but it only counted as 1 instrument. So we had to spend half an hour on piano and then half an hour on the organ. We woke up at 5 every morning to practice our instruments. And then I played string bass in the orchestra. And then in junior high, I still played in the orchestra, but I started playing electric bass and electric guitar, so I went to the dark side, but there's nothing wrong with that. But then I started playing banjo and accordion, and in jazz band I played piano in high school, but then I started playing saxophone as well. So I would.
Sounds like more than 3.
It kind of evolved. It kind of escalated from there.
I've always said if I was to play any other instrument than the piano, I just want to be able to shred on the electric guitar. Be awesome.
It is.
You're still young.
Fun. You still have time. You can do it. You can do it.
Well, thank you all so much for being on this panel and being here today. Again, one of the great things about having a conference is that we have so many different backgrounds all together. I really enjoy that. But I have one question that applies to pretty much all of us. How can we help a student who hates piano? And she tells us that every week at 6:30 a.m. Any thoughts? What do we do with students who hate piano?
Mark, do you want to take this one off?
Well, I was thinking that was a perfect question for you, Jerald. For me, I think is the number one. My mind always goes back to that phrase. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so number one, for me, the relationship is more important than anything. So whether they're, weeks upon weeks of not practicing, there's usually something behind that. It's usually not just like, I hate piano. And for me, it's always, I love the piano place has the mantra, making more than musicians. And I think, you know, we often become therapists too, you know, and among other things. And so being that person that your student knows, they can come in and you will hear them, and you can be that sounding board. I know things about my students sometimes I think that their parents don't even know.
I agree.
And they trust me to be that person. And just understanding that every student goes through phases. Sometimes they're hot and sometimes they're cold. And I really love the graphic in the book, The Talent Code. If you've read that, it says what we think success looks like. And you have point A to point B, right? And then right next to it says what success really looks like. Point A, point B.
And that's the sound it makes too, you know.
Right, that's my answer.
You'll wrap it up.
Oh, I'm not going to wrap it. Are we all supposed to answer?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
just trying to.
I thought I was
evade
thinking
the
of
question.
different examples, but yes, where our students, they can come to us, right? So I think find out why they hate piano. They probably don't hate piano across the board. They don't hate music. They maybe hate that they have. Most of my students, when they say they hate it, it's because they can't play with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
It takes the time out of their day. So they don't necessarily hate piano or music. They just hate that they have to stop and sit still, especially boys, for a little while, right? So I have one family. They're so cute when you ask them about. They're like, "This is the best." They practice at 6 in the morning, and they're done. They're like, get home from school, and they're like, "We get to play. We get to do whatever we want." And so that's one solution. That's not for everybody. My boys all play the piano, and I know Hillary Dembski at UVU, she came to me, she's like, "How did you do this?" Because she's just starting out with kids, and my youngest was a major for a while, and they all play really well. So I often trick them into playing a little bit more. So if their friends were wanting to play and they all come over and they're like, "We came to get Jerald and we want to play," right? I'm like, "Well, have a seat. We have some books in here. You need to practice for 10 minutes before you go." And I did that a lot. So a lot of their friends, and even like they'll come over as adults now, and they always kid about rules. Like, "You're on timeout," or they'll rush down the stairs as adults, right? And they'll say, "Well, you have to practice 10 minutes before you have to go." So I did that. They would practice like their main part, but then I would get a lot of extra little things, and if they're playing for their friends, they loved that. I was also with this question thinking, I have a student who, she's come back after, we couldn't figure out how many years, 3 or 4 years. She came back to lessons, and man, she's rocking it. But at that point, it wasn't the right thing. She couldn't do it. Her parents were in the right situation. Her family was, and you never know all those things. There's a lot of things that go into it. So she took a break, and now she's back and she's on fire. So I would say piano's not for everyone. Maybe the timing isn't the right for everyone. Maybe you can trick us into doing it. Like, it hasn't always been my favorite thing either. There were times that it wasn't my favorite thing, and I don't know why I have a doctor's degree now. I mean, I do, but, but it wasn't always my favorite thing. It asked me at 10, "Hey, are you going to do a doctor's degree?" I would never have done it at 10. But anyway, that's my answer, that it's not always the right thing, but if you can figure out what it is that you can resolve that first. Go ahead, Jerald.
I think sometimes it's the what's in it for me, the WIFM. In sales, they talk about that. But the students don't understand the benefit. You need to help them understand what the benefit is for them, and it's different for every single student. I had, my company is called Music Motivation, and so I started creating music to help motivate students, and then I started getting an influx of students. At one point I had almost 100 piano students, one-on-one. I was working 10 to 12 hours from Monday through Saturday, and half of my students were teens, especially young boys, in their junior high and high school age, and they all hated the piano, and they all wanted to quit. And they would fold their arms and say, "I'm not playing the piano, you can't make me play the piano," and they wouldn't play anything. And so I turned it into a game and I said, what if I compose a song during your lesson? I'll compose it. You tell me what style you want. You tell me what key signature. You tell me what time signature. You tell me what you want me to create. I'll create it. I'll even notate it in finale, print it out, and send it home with you. And you'll have a new composition, but you have to play. They started playing the piano. And they started enjoying it. And then they bring their friends. With teen boys in high school, I would say, are there any cute girls? Sit down on the piano next to a cute girl and start playing. Even if it's simple, even if you only know a 1, 5, 8, 9, 10 left-hand pattern, look into her eyes maybe. You know, they see the benefit. They see the benefit, and you have to help them understand what that benefit is. It's helping them realize. I had several students who became professional musicians. You down here, you may not know, but Natalie Campbell up north, okay? She had a son who was in junior high, Nate Campbell, who hated the piano. And he said, I'm quitting. I don't want anything to do with the piano. I hate classical music. And I said, I love classical music, but if you don't want to play classical music, that's fine. What do you want to play? And he said, no one's ever asked me that. And I said, well, you're the one at the piano. What do you want to play? And he said, well, my dad does jazz. He's a jazz band teacher at Woods Cross. And he said, I'd like to do some jazz. I said, let's do jazz. So we started working on jazz. 3 years later, he was still taking lessons from me, and he came to me and he said, can you start teaching me Rachmaninoff and Chopin? And I said, sure. We can start working on that. And he completely came full circle, and now he's a professional musician, and he's phenomenal. I mean, he's amazing. So...
Another trick for junior high boys is have them play for choir.
Exactly.
And that saved all my boys, I think, at a point where they want to stop. Just ask the choir director to ask them, and then the girls are like, whoa, they're like,
And make the lessons fun.
Huge.
With the teen boys, we start out with push-ups. I get down with them and we just do, it helps me stay in shape, you know, forces me to. But just make it fun. Whatever you do, just make it fun for them.
Great. I have something that is an interesting question that I never thought about. And maybe I can offer some thoughts that I have on that. So I'll join the panel for a second. Regarding improvisation, is it easier for people with perfect pitch? I do not know the answer. I have found that there's the entire spectrum. I have known, or I know people with perfect pitch who don't really have a great internal imagination of sound, and so improvisation is not necessarily a lot more natural. And I know people with perfect pitch who have an incredible just inner ear and an inner imagination. And I even know a good friend of mine who I went to school with. He really had incredible ears, but his playing suffered. And sometimes it was really not good playing because he listened to what he heard. He had such a strong internal image, he didn't listen to what's coming out of the piano. So in my experience, I don't think that is. There are some things that are easier for some and more difficult for others. Sight reading for me was always the strong suit. I never had a problem. I have many problems with other things. But that's my experience. I don't know if you have more other thoughts.
I don't have perfect pitch, so I have no...
Do you have perfect pitch?
Maybe
So my wife-
one of you maybe has experience
So
with
I
that.
have relative pitch. My wife has perfect pitch. And in all honesty, I think people who have perfect pitch or say they have perfect pitch, most don't. Most have relative pitch, and I have relative pitch. Perfect pitch, and I'll show you an example, is when you are born with it, like Mozart was. My wife, as a little 4-year-old girl, her sister, who was 9 years older, was playing the piano, and she was majoring in music, and she was working on these pieces, and my wife, as a 4-year-old girl, walked in, had never played any instruments, and said, "What you doing?" And her sister said, "Well, I'm practicing my songs." And my wife said, "Okay." And then her sister said, "This is an A, this is a B," and just played C, D, E, F, G. And that's all she did. She played it once for my wife as a little 4-year-old girl, and my wife said, okay, and she ran to the room. Then her sister kept playing, and her sister hit a note. And my wife in the other room at 4 said, that's an A. That's a G. That's an F. And then she heard a note, and she said, that sounds like it's in between an F and a G. But she didn't know what it was called, but she could tell it's not really an F, it's not a G, but it's in between an F and G. She was born with it. Now, what I think you can do with improvisation is teach them how to understand where they're going. With beginning level students, what I tell them is say it and play it. If they were playing like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, I would have them say and play C, C, G, G, A, A, G, or count it 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, And so they're counting the rhythm, they're saying and playing it. As they become more advanced, I tell students, if you can say it, you can play it. If we think of the music as a line, it's linear. When we add chords, then it becomes vertical. If you can say it, you can play it. So if I take Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, da 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 da. If I say something, ra da 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 do 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 do. Well, at the piano, if I can say it, I should be able to play it. Sorry, but. If I can say it, I can play it, but I need to know where I'm going. And I'll have students just practice vocally improvising, where they'll do da 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 da. If I want to go up, da 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 da. They can say da or whatever they want, but it's helping them visualize in their brains where they're going musically. And I think that is the difference, whether they have perfect pitch or not. Are you going up? Are you going down? Are you skipping? Are you jumping around? Whatever it is, you visualize where you're going. And I think that is the key to helping them understand what to do with improv.
Any of you have any experiences?
Yes, I've written and recorded some songs, and sometimes I've done just that. I'm trying to come up with something to play on the guitar or piano, and I can't quite come up with it, so then I'll just turn on, start recording my mic, and I'll just make vocals.
Just vocals, you play around,
I can kind of,
and then you can see it. I'll pull out a recorder, and I'll just start playing things on the recorder, and I think, well, if I can play on the recorder, I can play on the piano, and then I'll transfer what I'm doing from the recorder to the piano. And see, that's the key, where we're thinking that this is an instrument, but it's a vehicle for us to connect with the audience and to convey our thoughts. So many times, I'll help them understand. Sometimes I'll even tell students, and I'll say a phrase, paint me a rainbow. And then they sit down and I'll say, what does a rainbow sound like? Play me a thunderstorm. Play me a sunset. Play me a waterfall. Play me a rock. Whatever it is, I'm trying to create an image for them, and then I want them to use that imagery to then decide, am I playing loud? Am I playing soft? Am I going to be up high because the rain is coming down? Or am I going to be down low where we're doing this heavy, dark sound? I mean, in a major key, minor key, play me whatever. You can say, play me a river. And it's great because it helps the students. Sometimes you can even have them draw a picture if you want, and they can draw a picture, and then they write a song about the picture. So those are great ways to get them improvising.
Great, so it's kind of like, it seems like we're thinking it's a different sort of skill set. I would be really happy with any sort of pitch. I play a lot of jazz. I have been playing a lot of jazz. And I think the biggest difference for me, it was a big step to not have sheet music in front of me.
Yeah.
Giving myself license to play wrong notes and just calling them good notes. It's like now you rarely see me actually using music when I play jazz. And I was really just giving myself license to it. Yes, Ken?
I was just going to say, as somebody who's kind of on a little opposite spectrum, and I do have perfect pitch. And can be very frustrating.
It drives my wife
at
nuts.
many, yes.
She'll hear a cow moo,
Yes.
and it's like right in between an F sharp and a G. And she thinks,
Yes.
oh, just make up your mind, you know.
Yeah.
Come
It
on.
can be frustrating. And the older I'm getting, I hate to say this is like, Nancy, I don't know if you're having this issue, I hope not, but the older I'm getting, every now and then I'll go like,
It drives my
I
wife
swear that
nuts.
was a D
Uh-huh.
flat, and it's like in between, you know, and so I feel like things are getting lost, which drives me nuts. But with having the perfect pitch, I also have so much of the theory background, and I understand the chords, and I
Got to
understand
know it.
intervals, and I understand all of that kind of stuff, which I know darn well that makes me a better composer.
Yeah.
Because I understand that. And the more I've learned and the more I've understood, the better I've gotten, and the better I've gotten, and the better I've gotten. So I think it's a combination of, I mean, obviously not everybody has one perfect pitch and it can be a curse, but anybody, you don't have to have perfect pitch. I don't think anybody can learn to compose and be an incredible composer based
I agree.
on, and
You
there
need
can be
to know
crappy
the
composers
theory.
that have perfect pitch.
Part of it is what to do with the theory. It's that
Exactly.
practical application. If you learn the chords in root position, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion, that's great. But I tell my students, who cares? What can you do with it? How can you take that theory and apply it? You know, you may be able to look at a piece of paper, they're just dots on a page. It doesn't become music until you actually apply that music theory. So it's taking these patterns, because music is all about patterns. Many times I'll say, I want you to improvise with a scale. Well, in order to do that, you need to know your scales. If I want them to improvise with a mode, in jazz music, if we're doing like a 2-5 chord progression, going from a D minor 7th to a G 7th, and we're just weaving in and out of any key signature doing that, I need to know my 2-5 chord progression in every key. So you've got to understand the theory, and then you can start breaking it apart. And I'll tell students, take a chord, like a D minor 7th chord, break it apart, where you start at the bottom and you work your way to the top. Or start at the top and work your way to the bottom. Or play the D and then play the A and then play the F and then play the C. Or start at the top and play C, F, A, D. And you're giving yourself license to take that chord and play around with it. And I think that's what we need to do, is allow our students the freedom to play and make mistakes. There is no wrong note. I've performed in wars before where my wife will say, you played a wrong note, and then you just changed keys to make it sound like you were playing the right note. And I said, well, my pinky slipped, and it hit a wrong key, so then I thought, I've got to correct this, so I just did a transition, and all of a sudden we're in a new key, and I said, you were the only one that knew that happened. It was just because my finger hit my ring and kind of flopped. But there are no wrong notes. You just have to know how to work with them.
Yeah, great points. I have a couple of questions that are kind of along the same lines, and in an even more general sense, I have a student like that too. Sometimes we go to conferences and it's great, we're full of ideas, and or you read books, and I went to the state conference, the MPA state conference in November, and we had a faculty, a colleague from Weber State, presented Eugene, great class with a younger student. She did an incredible job with that. And, involving the student with singing and moving, and it's great. I should be doing that too. Oh, my student doesn't sing. Nothing. I can stand on my head. I can do whatever I want to. I don't sing. In lessons, I pretend that I'm okay with it. Sometimes it's important, but my student, I can't get her to do it. So we've been starting to practice whistling. I'm not good at it, she's not good at it, and I hope that's my way in, that she sees I also can't do it. So we're practicing that together. Is that going to help? I don't know, but it's the same idea of having an oral image. Anyway, the two questions are kind of related to that. First, more generally, how do you teach a child that wants to play piano but doesn't seem to understand, practice frequently, and has a non-musical family? Possibly dealing with a learning disability. Reading music is extremely difficult, and then a recommended method book for special needs students. And I sometimes have wondered about that too. Like I said, I don't have a good Good answer. So mine was, I think, the kind of student that all of us are facing, where a student just is not good with one aspect, and then there's a couple more specific things that I think are coming out of that. I don't know if you have. Carmen, do you want to start?
I can start. The disability thing is, you can suspect a disability, but really it comes down to what you're working with every day of the lesson. So, I have several recent experiences. One, very autistic, and his parents are super musical, tab choir, high school teacher. They really wanted him to play. We tried. Anyway, it comes down to, like, can they work with them at home? And anyway, I think they've come to the realization it's just maybe not the right time. We couldn't do it. And disabilities change too, right? They develop in there, and you also, we're not trained as piano teachers to work with them. We just do our best with what we know and what they know and what the parent tells you and shares. So I think you go forward and help out. Another disability that I just recently dealt with, I've been teaching this girl since she's probably first or second grade, and she came from another teacher, and the teacher said to me, "Oh, she's kind of slow." I was like, "Okay, whatever." And so you work with them, right? And you just do what you can do. And her mother is very supportive. Her mother actually teaches piano, and she was doing fine. And in the sixth grade, they found out she has a hearing impediment, and she actually got hearing aids and then a cochlear implant. Sixth grade, right? And then she was diagnosed with autism. She's on the spectrum. This is sixth grade. And then her mom would call like this big serious thing, and I was thinking, it's great to know, but it doesn't really change how I've worked with her, because we just work and do what she can do. So interesting stories with disabilities, right? But they change, and then you work with the resources that you have and what they find out. So method book, I think, and if they say they're autistic or if they have a hearing disability, each one of those is different. Every single disability is different, and their situation at home is different. So you just do your best going forward and help the parents.
I just really appreciate how you worded it, that you just do what they can do.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of years when I was teaching, I had this expectation of, no, they have to do certain things. And after so many years and becoming a mother, and just more realist, those expectations change of, this child can do this, as where this one, it may take a little bit longer or a different approach. And so I really appreciate the do what they can do.
And do what works that day, right?
That day,
Yeah.
or even that day, we
People are doing the best they can, and we need to switch it from expectation, I think, to aspirations, because they are aspiring, but everyone is on a different path, different time.
And everybody has disabilities too, like
Right.
every single person, even like if you have something hard happen in your life, that's kind of a disabling, right? So we all have them week to week, day to day. So it's,
I had one student that he could not retain anything. He had some brain injury as he was being born, and he could kind of survive in the world, but couldn't retain anything, and so had special classes and special needs, but he wanted to learn music and loved it. So every week we were starting at middle C, and 2 black notes and 3 black notes, but we finally got to a point. We weren't much past middle C out for about 5 notes for the whole time I had it.
wow.
But
It takes so much patience as a teacher.
I
And I would say, like, some teachers can do that and some cannot. So you just have to say, am I the teacher for that student? Or
So
would another
true.
teacher be better?
With that, I think you really have to have a lot of courage and be willing to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Because be authentic and vulnerable, when you're working with students like that, you really have to have open dialogue with the student, with
And the parent.
the parent. And sometimes we can feel really vulnerable reaching out to a parent and being like, I don't know what to do. And thinking that, because that opens the door for them to be like, well, you're the professional, you should know what to do, right? That's what we tell ourselves, I think. But oftentimes people really appreciate it, when you're like, I don't really know what to do. Can you give me some perspective here, you know? And or even being vulnerable enough to be like, I don't think I'm the right fit. You know, I've tried all these things. I think someone else might be a really good fit I can help you find. You know, that takes a lot of vulnerability
It does.
to admit that.
But it's helpful as teachers that you need to know who your audience is, who your market. Because sometimes I think we want to teach to everyone. That doesn't work. You may be a better teacher for the little kids, you know, ages 4 through, well, I don't think everyone should really start at 4, that's a different thing. But, you know, under 9, or you may be, you know, more for teens or adults, or you need to be focused on a specific group. I personally like to teach music theory, improvisation, and composition primarily to teens and adults. And I'll have students that will come and I'll say, I really like them to be 12 and above. So if they're under 12, let's have you get in with another teacher, and then later on you can come to me if you want. I had a student who came to me one time and said, I only want to play Haydn sonatas and sonatinas. That's it. That's all I want to do. And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I love Haydn sonatas, but I can't do that every single week and only play his music. And I said, if you just want to play classical, we can branch out, and there are several other, and he said, no, I only want to do Haydn. I said, there's a great teacher named Rick up in Ogden, I think you would like, and this is his forte, this is what he does. He has them all memorized. He has every single Haydn sonata and sonatina memorized, and I said, he's your man. And he went and met with him, and then he came back and said, yeah, I'd rather take from you. I said, I'm not that guy. I'm sorry. I love you. I think you're great, but I can't do it. I can't just sit there and teach Haydn every single week. Me personally.
They'll probably grow out of that.
It's a phase, right? They'll grow out of it. Okay.
I had a little experience about what you guys are talking about. I had a child they were learning that he was autistic and on the spectrum and stuff, and he would come to piano lessons, and I would give him one correction, and he would run out of my house and be throwing a tantrum. I had to go find him because his mom left him here with all 4 of her children, and basically glorified babysitting. Anyway, we fixed it. I raised my prices. They pulled back. The kid came to me just the other day, and I'm going to cry, and he started with a new teacher, and he's like, Stephanie, you got me into loving piano. I'm doing so good in piano, and it's because of you. And I'm like, what? I hated you. And so I think, though, like, recognizing our abilities, but also giving all that we can to the kids as we can. So,
And
yeah.
I think that's the key, because you need to realize they're doing the best they can, but you're doing the best you can. And you give and sometimes you may be the launching point where you get them excited and love piano, and then you pass them off and hand them off to someone else. And that's okay. I think sometimes we're either so worried about the expectations of peers or other people that we think, oh, well, I should be able to teach everyone. I should be able to teach all styles and we don't realize there's a limit to what we can and should do. And that's okay.
So if this student is unable to progress, they're not comprehending or retaining the information, do we push them forward or do we keep them stunted?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Questions like that. I have a senior in high school, and I've had him now for year 2. He's had previous lessons and things like that. This kid, if we can get through one song that he can do at my yearly festival, that's a huge success. What I have done, and again, I think it boils down to what you all have said, it's about the one. It's about how we can influence the one student and what we can do. Can we help them to love music? If they're being belligerent, of course, no one pays me enough money to listen to your kids cry. That's not going to happen. But I have now created a relationship with this kid. He comes at 6:30 without fail every Friday morning after he works late. He has never missed a lesson. And we do the same thing. We're doing Don't Rush again. Hey, you beat it by 1 second. Oh, you're 5 seconds over. But we talk about his day. We talk about what he's doing. He's learning a song. Hopefully it will be ready by festival. But the point is that is he going to be a great musician? No. But did he have a positive experience with me as a teacher? I certainly hope he did. And I think that trumps any music learning thing at all, if we can make them feel that they are doing well and doing what they can, and are they having a good experience with
Yeah.
music.
And I think it says a lot about you, Lori.
Oh,
You're
no.
great.
This is a contentious topic.
Oh.
I have a response to that just a little bit. Because I had a beautiful young male student, and I taught him for about 3 years. And by the time he got to like 10, almost 11, he just kind of bottomed out. And that's the hands together stuff. And he did have quite a few genetic disabilities that he was born with. But now he's about 15, 16, and he's taking cello lessons from our cello professor, and he's doing fabulous. And the fact that he just changed instruments to an instrument that pretty much does one note at a time made the difference.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's they need a different instrument. Not, you know.
And I think it's finding their genre. I have students who just want to do hymns or just jazz or blues. You know, what is their area of focus? And that will help them. But yeah, it's the one. It's connecting with them. Don't teach them all the same way. They're individuals. They should be individually taught.
I was just going to say, like, I teach orchestra through 6th through 12th grade as well, and there's a kid that came in autistic, and he's like, I'm going to play the bass. I play the right bass, but I want to play the upright bass. And I was like, okay, let's give it a try. And he could not learn the notes, but he could improvise like crazy. And like, that's just what he wanted to do. And I was just like, okay, this is not the class for you. Like, I think he would do really well in individual lessons. And I think he's thriving in that, but also just finding ways in our classes or private lessons that you can do it. It's like, I know lots of kids like the YouTube videos that it literally shows the things coming down, and they can say, oh, I know what note it is.
Oh, I've made several of those videos.
So just, like,
I
different ways, or even the kid that can't read music, but they can, if you play it, they can repeat it back. If you can focus on just like giving them an experience of they can play it, even if it's not how we like expect them to read it. Maybe they'll enjoy it enough to finally learn it in the end, right?
And some brains work differently.
Yeah.
Because
Some,
most of the students who
It's
came to
actually
me,
all of ours.
well, all brains work differently, but I had a lot of students who came to me, and the teacher said, you know, please, you're like the last hope. I don't know if I was the last ditch hope, but it's not that these kids hated music. Many of them, they had a struggle putting hands together or doing things, and I asked them all what hand they wrote with. The majority were left-handed, who could not get it. They could improvise, they could play, but they couldn't read the music, and they had a struggle reading the music. But they could embellish and arrange, and they could play by ear. And many times they were left-handed.
How many people are left-handed in here?
Big surprise.
I'm ambidextrous, actually. But yes.
Yes.
I just want to tell you, having taught more than most of you have ever taught, two things. I've had children who are ADD, attention deficit disorder. It's physically impossible for them to do some things, but I had a wise teacher, high school teacher, who said that some of her students responded, the ADD students, responded to a colored sheet of paper, like cellophane, put over the music, depending on the colors. And so I bought those index chats, and I had this one girl who just could not learn, and she put on an orange one, and all of a sudden she could see. And it made a lot of difference in her high school studies too. Okay, the second thing
And how do you discover something like that?
just by talking with a woman who was trained with ADD. And then we just tried it. And I've tried it with some other kids, it doesn't work. But anyway.
right. Everybody's different.
We teach, and we've all talked about intervals. And you turn the music sideways.
Yeah.
And you look at the distance between. Some children are able to focus in on that. whereas they couldn't do it if you turned it right upside.
Yeah.
And I always figure you have to have like 4 or 5 ways to teach everything.
Yeah.
Right, like that. So you can't just say this is my only way. You have to, like, if they don't get it, you come at it a different way, different way.
But that does help with ADD. And they also usually have great ears. And you teach them the chords with the intervals, they can go from there.
Well, please keep talking. That's what this is about. That's why I tell my students, you've got to come here because you can hear from different people and get different experiences. Unfortunately, all of our clocks are on the same page.
They're all lined up.
Yes, they are not there. So we're out of time, and to leave us a little bit of time for lunch, we probably should end it here. But thanks so much to our panel, and I think we'll be resuming at 1 o'clock in here.